from submission, not at times, despite our surroundings, to delivery. And this is basically running through a talk I recently submitted, built and delivered for a B-Sides. This is my approach to doing it. It's not the one and only approach. It's one that has worked possibly more than it should over about a decade. So here we go. At least here we go if I can get that. There we go. 5-step plan. First, find inspiration. Usually this is something that annoys me, often on LinkedIn. Second, find a CFP, somewhere that's doing a call for papers, that's asking, will people do talks for us? Not one of those ones that says, do a call for papers and we'll accept it and then we'll charge you £2,000 to attend. Only free ones. Third, create an outline. This is, for me, usually a list of things that I want to get across in the talk. I start with a long list and then I'll cut it down. Then build the presentation and then deliver the talk. One of the biggest mistakes I think people make is trying to do the last 3 steps before the second one. Submit the talk before you're starting to build it. You're not trying to build something perfect. You're trying to submit an idea, and if they like the idea, then you can put the work in. You only need about a paragraph at most to do the CFP side. I now usually get away with 2-3 sentences, and somehow people can spot that it's me. So, finding inspiration. Well, for the talk I'm talking about, this gets very meta. Excuse me. What I found was a whole load of posts on LinkedIn and news articles and similar saying 70% of ransomware attacks target small businesses. And I like numbers, and I realise that's unreadable, but most of them are about how 70% of ransomware targets small businesses, and therefore buy our product and we'll solve it for you. That irritated me. And because it irritated me, I then said, I'm going to go and talk about this, and talk about it to people who will either find it annoying, humorous, or care. Possibly all 3. So the next step was onto a CFP. Now, you can't see it at all on here, which is less than useful. But on the other side of this, in this vague white area with a few grey smudges, you have whole things like, what's the title of your talk? What's your elevator pitch? 30 words or so. What's your talk format? That means how long is it? I mean, this one, I put it in at 30 minutes. I think they gave me nearly an hour. Never expect it to be what you're asking for. What's the audience level? Is it expert technical people? Is it anyone? And then a description. And that's it. That's all you need to put in for the actual submission. It is surprisingly easy to do, and once you've put it in place and submitted it, and they've gone, oh yes, we accept it. You know, you've got a week before the conference now. It's usually longer than that. But sometimes it's a week, and sometimes your computer locks in the middle of a presentation. So you then go through, you fill that in. Honestly, it's only once it's been accepted that it's worth building. People get hung up on, oh, but I want it to be right. No, deal with that afterwards. You've got an idea. Submit the idea. If people want to hear that idea, they will accept it. They will say to you, yeah, we want you to come and be a speaker, and we'll give you a special T-shirt and a free ticket. Free ticket's the important bit. Put it all together, submit it, wait. Do not worry about it. You can have it bouncing around at the back of your mind. But submit it first, then worry about perfection. And equally, don't pursue perfection, that's not worth it. Create an outline. So my outline was, I want to talk about statistics. I was irritated by the LinkedIn post, and therefore I figured other people will be irritated by the LinkedIn post. So I said, well, the first slide is going to be, here's the LinkedIn post. It irritated me, it probably irritates you. Let's talk about why. Next, I wanted to raise the lack of source. Now, this is specific to cybersecurity communities and certain other technical ones. We love puns, therefore the lack of source was a lack of source joke. then show a statement from the people who were cited with that statistic where they said, yeah, we never actually said this. We just referenced something else that we later found out to be wrong, and so we retracted it. Then I wanted to break it down and go into the mathematics of, okay, but what if that 70% was accurate? Well, it's not unrealistic, because 99.99% of businesses are small businesses, 70% they're doing pretty well. Common mistakes in statistics, that was a natural lead on. Spotting made-up numbers, because that's another bugbear of mine. And then questions, contact slide. I do not recommend doing a question slide. We'll see one in a bit. Because what happens is you go, any questions? And you get a deathly silence. There's two ways to deal with that. One is to have someone prepped with a question, and it might be your MC. It might be friendly people in the audience who you've had a quick word with and said, by the way, when I say any questions, if you can just stick your hand up and I'll call on you. And if you ask me this question, I'm prepared and I sound really confident. And that will also let everyone else in the audience have permission to think up and ask their own questions. And then the other thing, often missed out in talks, is after that, and this is something you will probably need to talk to the MC about, you want a call to action. You do the questions and you want a farewell, because there are few things more depressing than going a final, any questions, oh, see there aren't any, and walking sadly off the stage. So a call to action saying, just remember, numbers lie to you. Marketers are going to use numbers to lie to you in this particular case. Whatever it might be, have that call to action, have that final message. So, we've done the submission. The outline is just a load of bullet points. It's, I want to do this. The next thing I do, other people will say, well, you need to craft them, you need to narrow them down, you need to cut them out. They're not wrong. They just have a different approach. My approach may or may not work for you. But the next thing I do is start building out slides, and I do that directly from the outline. So, my rules for slides. Never, ever more than 3 main points per slide. I usually try to stick to one. As you will see, in this case, no more than 3 points per slide. No more than 3 words per point. What's important to know is these are guidelines, not rules. And the important thing about guidelines is if you're going to break them, know why you're breaking them. Don't want to break it. I've had slides which are almost full of text. One of the earliest ones had a whole load of LinkedIn posts. I'm not expecting everyone to read all that, but that's a lot of text on the side. And yeah, it's a guideline. There's all sorts of rules and frameworks and different things for building presentations, and they are useful, but they're not legally enforced. No one will arrest you for using 5 words per point. No one will arrest you for using 5 points per slide. Maybe they should, but they won't. So, the key thing about those is, no, I'm going against the general advice. Why am I doing it? Am I doing it because my computer keeps locking because someone probably unplugged it? But know why and when you're doing it. Be intentional when you're breaking these things. Even if you've chosen completely inappropriate rules, it forces you to think about it. So the case study, because recycling is big and clever. Everyone loves recycling. This was the one I built, which I delivered a few weeks ago now. The numbers game. Obviously, clever use of numbers for lead speak in the title because it's a security conference. Come on. There's my LinkedIn slide to open it. Screenshot. That one was mocked up because I don't like calling the individuals out because they sue me or threaten to. And then throwing in other bits and pieces, repeating the statistic, emphasising the point, and more importantly saying, this is the problem, this is the thing that really irritated me enough that I'm willing to stand on stage and talk to you about it. It doesn't have to be something that irritates you. It could be something you're passionate about. It could be something you don't care about in the least, but someone's paying you to stand there and explain it to people. But you've got to have a reason, and you really want to emphasise that. If it's because you're being paid to do it, pretend you're passionate. If it's because it's irritated you or you actually care, then just lean on that. There were a lot of those posts. So, next step was what's missing. Nice heading, and here we go with the joke. The sauce. If you can get an extra joke in by doing Old War's hot sauce because your surname is War, all the better. People love puns, and ones that pump up your own ego, brilliant. Then going into the reference from the agency or the alliance who actually had that whole statistic and said, yeah, that's not what we said, and you will keep referencing it, and here is our statistic saying, we didn't say that, stop doing it, which everyone ignores because marketers do that. Then the maths. Now this is always a challenge because people don't like a lot of text. You'll notice more than 3 words per point, by the way. And here it was just a breakdown. There are people who will say, never use animations and slides. Those people are wrong. Because use animations and slides when you are trying to make a point. And with this one, as you saw, it was broken down so that I could introduce each individual step one by one. And it all stays up there. So if I was given this actual presentation, I would have gone through. This is what a micro, small and medium business is. This is a large business. This is the numbers involved. And at each one of those, because in an ideal world, I've remembered my clicker, I'd have gone click and then done a dramatic. Yeah, there's 5.5 million small businesses, which are micro, small and medium. It's 72% of UK businesses have no employees. Fun fact. So, statistically speaking, 99.86%, blah, blah, blah. I've now made my point, I've sourced it, I've even got a reference at the bottom, which is surprisingly readable on the screen. Source. And 0.14% are large businesses, or not small to medium businesses. So 70% of tax against small businesses, really, small businesses keep it up. Then more maths, how many attacks there are, blah, blah, blah. More evidence supporting that original point or contradicting that original point, the thing that irritated me, and explaining why. Because I asked about the numbers behind it and whether it made sense to do it as this big alarmist thing of small businesses are always targeted. Running through the mistakes. This was just following on. So another of the points I was making in that outline, I want to go into the statistical mistakes that people make. Well, how do I do that? Pie charts. Newspapers love pie charts. Newspapers love pie charts which don't show proportions well. How can I illustrate that? Stick a chart up. Visual representations work a lot better than textual ones when you're presenting. There's also the fact that if you're presenting, genuinely you want people focusing on you, not on your slides. What happens if you have a slide filled with text is the first thing people do is read it. If you've got 50 words on that, that's, for most people, 3 to 5 seconds of reading. So if you're immediately blasting into, I'm going to talk about this slide, they've got 3 to 5 seconds of processing time with the text before they start listening to you again. We can only do one thing at a time that requires focus. We can do multiple things at a time that don't, but one thing that requires focus. So if you're presenting and you want to present something with lots of text, put it up, give yourself a pause, take a drink. Also because you're thirsty, and let them read it. Chats are always fun. Again, laughs are always fun. There is a genuine load of research out there that shows that people remember things that drive engagement. If you can make people laugh during your presentation, I would not recommend this for a eulogy. in most cases. Having said that, sometimes it's worthwhile having that bittersweet laugh. But if you can make people laugh or smile during your presentation, that's something that sticks. One of the big secrets of presenting is no one actually cares. None of you are going to go home and wake up at night thinking, oh, I've got to remember what James said about how to present. The moment you walk out of here, it's probably going to drift away. But you'll remember, oh, that bit was funny. What was the point he was making this? So emotional engagement and laughter are big things. And incidentally, the number of breweries in the United States do correlate with solar power generated in Peru. And the website up there, tylervigan.com, Spurious Correlations, they've now introduced AI, which gives explanations of the complete nonsense correlations. More pictures. I prefer pictures to text. Sometimes I'll just do a picture rather than text. Slides are actually optional. I could present this without the slides, and it would be almost the same, except you'd have to try and remember the maths bits. But people tend to lean on them more than they should. The slide is a prompt. The notes can be important, particularly with things like my introduction to information theory, where I have to remember a whole load of stuff, including formulae, and they're hard. But most of the time you only need an image, or not even an image. The slide's useful because it gives you something to gesture dramatically at, and that makes it look like you're speaking to an authoritative source. Cherry-picking data. Absence of evidence is not equal to evidence of absence. And that, I had a whole slide on logical symbols because I like them, but we'll ignore that. Most importantly, never trust marketing research or anyone telling you how to present. How to spot fake numbers. We avoid zero. I'm going to skim through these. This is a presentation I gave, but these are just a load of bullet points that I wrote down under that original set saying, well, how do you spot fake numbers? Okay, here's 5 tips. Overprecision, clusters and sequences. No doubles. People don't like doubles in random numbers. And Benford's law, lovely one. Then the contact slide. So this is where you say, right, that was everything. Any questions? I'm not going to do that now. Call to action. If someone's using numbers to make a point, ask questions. Then we go into delivery. We've built the slides. Brilliant. How do we deliver it? Well, it's readable enough. Remember, it's an extreme sport. Once you've stepped on stage, it is like skydiving. You know, you've jumped out of the plane, there's one way that you're going to go. Whether you pull the parachute in time or not, that's tomorrow's problem, very briefly. So, things to remember. You care more than anyone in the audience. You are the only one focused on mistakes that you're making. You are the only one paying attention to them. Everyone lives in their own head, in their own world. So, no one is going to remember your mistakes, except, as I do sometimes say, if you step far to the stage. If you can avoid that, you're probably doing okay. Planting questions is fair play. It's not just fair play, it's a really good idea. If you know where you're going to speak, if you know someone in the audience, or if you have the MC or anything else, quick word beforehand to say, hey, can you ask this question when I ask questions? It just breaks that ice. Otherwise, everyone's frozen, deer in headlights. It's horrendous. There are few things more terrifying to a speaker than going, any questions? And everyone goes, didn't realise this was interactive. Glass of water is your friend. I say water for legal reasons, but one of the big tips that you can use is if you've forgotten what you're saying, if you start to stumble, if you start to like pull in pause words and you get overconscious about it, take a sip. No one's going to care about that because that's something you do, because your voice is getting tired. And that gives you a few seconds to just go, oh yeah, I remember what I was talking about now. So a glass of water, some sort of prop that you can use to just go, right, yeah, that's where I was, I'll carry on. Don't do a question slide, Because, again, it's that whole deer in headlights thing. And there are cases you might want to, but in most cases, if you're presenting, it's either to convince people to make a decision, and that's business presentations, which are slightly different, or it's for a mixture between education, entertainment, and call to action. In which case, the question slide is wasted because everyone knows that you just said any questions and their brains immediately paralyse them. So instead, a context slide. You want people to be able to talk to you about that topic afterwards because they care about it too and they couldn't think of it then, but they want to get in touch. And if you're going to break rules or guidelines, no matter which presentation framework you're using, do it deliberately. Think about it and consider it and really be intentional about it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to break those rules. It's a great thing to break them. But if you're going to do it, they're there to make you think, why am I doing this? Anyway, any questions? I forgot to plant the questions, damn it.
What do you do when, how do you find out what you're going to say? Like, do you write it all out first and do like a print notes, like bullet points up? Or do you do that first and then print notes from that? Or do you just have a really good number?
So I'm a bad example of this. Lots of people like to rehearse or write it out beforehand. I do not like to write it out beforehand at all. I will do in certain very narrow cases, and that's where it is something like a eulogy or a wedding address or emceeing where, no, I really need to get this right. But in most cases, it's a mixture between improvisation and bullet points. Because that lets me look at the audience, see, are they smiling, are they happy, are they engaged? If they're not, I'm going to just shuffle that, I'm going to skip through it because that's not so relevant to them. I'll see if I can present it another way. That doesn't apply to everyone. It's a very personal thing. So a lot of people aren't comfortable doing that. That's not that they're wrong and I'm right, although I am. It's that it does take practice. I've been doing this for 10 years. At this point, I can, as I will probably get forced to do by certain people in B-sides tomorrow, present on any topic I know enough about with seconds of notice. But that takes practice. Having a script can be useful for some people, but I would advise against having a full script written out of, I need to say these exact words. Because people can tell when you're reading and when you're not actually thinking about your audience or engaging with them, and they can see you looking at this white paper that you've stuck on your slides, which are also up there, and reading it out word by word, including citations. So I don't recommend having a full script, but having bullet points, if you think of the type of things you could put on index cards per slide, they're great. They just remind you to keep on track and remember what you were talking about at that point, which is really useful when you lose track in the middle and have that sip of water and go, what the hell was I talking about?
Yeah. How you water by context.
What were your intentions in breaking that rule?
That was purely humour.
Yeah.
Like I said, a laugh. It's almost always worthwhile, particularly in any public presentations. You can go wrong with humour. There are things you should avoid. Self-deprecating humour, which is one of my favourites, is actually something to avoid. Because if you're on stage and you're presenting, you are actually standing up as the expert. You don't want to be standing there saying, oh, I actually know nothing about this, but I'm going to talk to you about it anyway, unless that's part of your whole format, such as pretending to be someone else. Also, question slides. They're a standard, people just do them. If you don't know what to put in, it's better than a thank you slide at the end. But genuinely, that contact information slide is better because people will then contact you and talk to you.
So when I'm on talks, I'm not saying I'm out of talks. So is that a real thing? Or is it just a real thing?
Sorry, what was...
When I'm on stage for a talk, I have no clue where it's about how like post-talk music.
So,
is that a thing?
yes, so when I say it's an extreme sport, I'm only half joking. There is an adrenaline rush, there's an endorphin rush. When you get off the stage, there's a whole load of stress done. I mean, when I get off the stage, I'm generally a bit shaky for a bit, need a moment to cool down. And it is an intense experience. The larger the crowd, the more intense, but at a certain size, smaller crowds also get quite focused.
Yeah.
We, as humans, generally have a very strong sense of social embarrassment. And people say they fear public speaking more than death. I don't know how many of them have died and compared it, but people say that. I don't quite believe it. However, it is a fear, and it's a very common fear. That means there is this huge adrenaline, hormone, endorphin rush that you get. And when you're in that position of stress, things do blur. And you might remember, I said that sort of thing. But there's no way I'm stepping off the stage and remembering the exact words I said. Are we done? Am I safe?